Hello! We have got a new background because I finally got a desk. I'm very happy about it. I might need to clean it and actually make it look more aesthetically pleasing than messy. It is a little messy. I also have this really nice comfy chair that I'm sitting on, and I'm very comfy in some comfy sweats. I also just woke up, but I'm ready to talk about some books. So these are the books that I have read in the months of February and March. You guys, I am doing so good with reading this year. I've never read this many books like at one time this early on in the year. I'm almost at 50 books read, and we're not even halfway through the year. I don't know what's happening with me, but I'm happy about it. I'm excited, and I'm ready to talk about these books with you. As always, we start with statistics here because I'm a Capricorn and I love stats. I didn't do stats for the 2 months combined, so we'll just do them for the separate months, and I'm going to try to go through them quickly because we do have a lot of books to go through. So for February, I read 3 hardcovers. Yes, I did. Okay, I read 3 hardcovers and 9 paperbacks, 9 white authors and 3 BIPOC authors, which I'm not happy about. 2 books that came out in 2021 and 10 backlist books. I read 7 male authors and 5 female authors, 3 YA books and 9 adult books. The shortest book I read was 112 pages, and then the longest book I read was 405 pages. So total I read 2,471 pages. So even though I did read a lot of books, I read a lot of very short books, so not a lot of pages. But per day, that means I read 88.25 pages a day. I read 1 nonfiction, 6 sci-fi, 1 fantasy, 1 poetry, 1 historical fiction, 1 thriller, 1 romance. And then I read 1 2-star, 4 3-stars, and 7 4-stars, which is an average of 3.5 stars. Okay, for March, I read 9 hardcovers and 5 paperbacks. I read 7 white authors and 7 BIPOC authors. I like it being even there. 6 2021 releases and 8 backlist books. I read 1 male author, 10 female authors, and 2 non-binary authors. 4 YA, 10 adult. The shortest book I read was 29 pages. That literally took me 2 minutes to read. The longest book I read was 488 pages, which I think so far is the longest book I've read this year. Total, I read 3,395 pages, which averages to about 109.5 pages a day. I read 5 poetry, 2 fantasy, 3 nonfiction, 1 romance, 1 sci-fi, 1 contemporary, and 1 mystery. And then for stars, I got 2 2-stars, 2 3-stars, 4 4-stars, and 4 5-stars, which is an average of 3.8. It was a very good month of reading. Honestly, I just had such a great time reading these past couple of months, and I'm really excited to talk about these books. So first, I'm going to talk about the Paper Girls graphic novel series. I read the entire thing. This is by Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chiang, Matt Wilson, and Jared K. Fletcher. And they consist of 6 volumes. But I love Brian K. Vaughan. This is my 3rd Brian K. Vaughan graphic novel series that I have read by him, and it's probably my least favorite. Ooh, I hate saying that. It's not that I didn't like it. I did enjoy it, but I was also just like really confused throughout most of it. But this is a graphic novel series. It's sci-fi following, this is volume 6, following a group of girls who deliver newspapers. It takes place in the 80s, but then they get sent through time and find themselves in like a time war. This is probably my favorite art styling. I loved the artwork within this book. It was so colorful, so vibrant. I loved the art a lot. Story-wise, it was very interesting, but it was hard to follow, and I think that's just me. I have noticed this when it comes to time travel books. It is hard for me to follow, and I usually find it very confusing, especially when you're traveling through multiple different time periods. Like, we even go to the caveman time era, and then we also go way into the future, and it was just really confusing. I really liked the characters. That was probably another favorite part of mine. I enjoyed these. This is volume 6 again. What am I doing? Wait, where's volume 1? Here we go. I really liked these 4 characters, these 4 girls, and the journey that they went on, and everything that they went through was kind of wild and crazy. They all have like different personalities, but yet they all mesh well. They all mesh together really well. I also thought the ending of the series was really confusing. Maybe now I can hold up the 6th volume. So the ending was very confusing. I kept reading because I really like Brian K. Vaughan's endings of his series. They're usually always my favorite. So I thought like reading to the end, I would get like answers and a nice conclusion. The ending was just so weird and so confusing. I really did not understand what was going on. So I think the plot was good and I had a fun time. I just don't think everything was really executed well enough. So volume 1, right, okay. Volume 1 I gave it 4 stars. Volume 2 I gave 4 stars. Volume 3 I gave 4 stars. Volume 4, what? Did I say this was 4? This is 3. Volume 4 I gave 4 stars. Volume 5 I also gave 4 stars. So I gave 4 stars throughout the entire series, but then volume 6 I gave 3 stars. I'm so upset that this is my least favorite Brian K. Vaughan graphic novel series. I really wanted to love it. Next I will talk about the poetry books because I read 6 poetry overall and they can probably be pretty easy to get through because there's not a lot to really talk about. Okay, so the first thing that I read was Teiching by Lao Tzu. So I don't know if this is technically considered poetry. It kind of is, but it's also kind of not because it wasn't in the poetry section of the store, but I'm gonna put it in the poetry section of mine because it kind of read like poetry. But the Teiching, how to explain this? This talks about Taoism, which is like a Chinese philosophy. How about I just read the back of the book because I'm having difficulty describing what this is, even though I read all about it. So it's a mystical spiritual soul of Taoism, one of the 3 great religions of ancient China, along with Confucianism and Buddhism, so it's a religion. It says it right there. I don't know why I was... Anyway, the Tao is usually translated as the way or the path, but it is better understood as a universal life force that flows around and through all things. I will say, as I was reading this, it felt a lot like the Force from Star Wars. But the Tao Te Ching teaches us that happiness is found in becoming one with the Tao, which enables us to live in harmony, balance, and peace, and to develop the virtues of humility, moderation, and compassion. It's a religion that was relayed to someone back in 6th century BC, and someone just decided to write it down. It's mainly just about like peace and harmony, yada yada yada. It actually took me quite a long time to read, even though it's short and like there's barely any words on the page, but it's because I found myself reading the text over and over and over again because there was just like so much to unpack within just such a little amount of words that were being said. Reading it over and over, it definitely made me think. So don't go into this thinking it's going to be a quick read. You are going to have to read it over and over to really understand what it's trying to get across. And I did like a good amount of the teachings. I don't know if you can see my tabs, but I have a lot of tabs here where I did highlight some stuff that I liked, but it did feel kind of like hokey pokey at times. I don't know how to phrase it. And it did also repeat itself quite a bit. And it's also like a text that I don't think changes my life in any way, but it was nice to read and it would be nice to go back to from time to time. So I gave this 3 stars. Next I have here The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. This just recently came out. And this is the 29-page book, very short. It's in the poetry section, so I'm considering it poetry. But what this is the inaugural poem, the inaugural speech for Joe Biden that was given by Amanda Gorman. Here's a picture of her giving the speech. I think this is great. I don't really know what else to say. It's because it's so short. But I liked the words that were being said. I liked the message that was coming across. I thought it was spoken very eloquently and very well. There's not much to say. I gave it 5 stars though. Next we have The Sweetest Kind of Poison by Katie Weismer. I've read Katie Weismer's other poetry. Oh, by the way, my poetry books are over here at my desk. So Poems Are the End of the World, and I really enjoyed that. I still think I like that one more than this one. Just so you guys know, for my poetry tastes, I like modern poetry. Not many people do. but I do. This one, I believe, though, is about an abusive relationship, and it's about the love with that. So like the love of falling into it and then falling out of love and like the messiness and confusion behind that. But yeah, I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. Next I have The Truth About Magic by Atticus. I didn't really like this. I thought I was gonna really like Atticus because I liked the setup and the look of the photographs with the poems. Like I just liked that a lot. But the poems I felt said nothing. And I also just didn't feel any emotional connection to it. I think there were a few that I felt an emotional attachment to, but overall, it was just kind of meh. So I gave this 2 stars. Okay, I also have Pillow Thoughts and Pillow Thoughts 2, Healing the Heart, both by Courtney Peppernell. I really enjoy Courtney Peppernell. This one made me cry. Like, I felt so emotionally attached to this. It was fantastic. And then this one, still really enjoyed. Probably not as much as this one. But yeah, I like Courtney Peppernell a lot, and I definitely want to pick up more in her Pillow Thoughts series and just more of her standalone stuff too. Okay, so I gave Pillow Thoughts 5 stars, and I gave Healing the Heart 4 stars. And the last poetry I have to talk about is Milk and Vine 2 by Adam Gasaweski and Emily Beck. Oh, and there's a foreword by Carl from online. So I can grab this one. I read the first one, Milk and Vine, last year. It was really funny, so I bought the second one. This is definitely for a specific group of people. If you remember Vine, if you loved Vines, all of like the famous popular Vines are in here. They're in both of these. It's just the Vines put into words and made into a poetry collection. Like just this, I don't need friends, they disappoint me. Who knows that Vine? Also, I think the first one is one of my favorites. Yeah, they ask you how you are and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand. People are using that a lot on TikTok. Let me go to the first one too, because the first one had a lot of my absolute favorites. Oh, what up? I'm Jared, I'm 19, and I never fucking learned how to read. And it comes with like little pictures too. I don't know if you can actually see because of the white balance, but like it comes with little pictures. It's so stupid. But I really enjoy Vines and TikToks, even though I never had either of those apps. Yeah, no, so if you loved Vines and you miss Vine, get Milk and Vine 1 and 2. A lot of the popular famous ones are in these in poetry format. I didn't rate this because there's no reason to rate this. There's no way to rate it. It's just Vines. Okay, we'll leave the 2021 releases for last, so let's talk about not 2021 releases. So first we have The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo, Midnight Tales and Dangerous Magic. This is a collection of folktales and fairy tales from the Grishaverse, which I am a huge fan of the Grishaverse. Both of those series, the Shadow and Bone series and the Six of Crows series, that's my favorite. Probably my favorite fantasy of like all time. And I'm reading King of Scars currently right now. I'm trying to get it done before the series comes out. I'm so freaking excited. So basically the author created these fairy tales and fables that are in this world that she created. And this, I think there's 6 in here, but I love the Grishaverse. I really loved these stories. My favorite part though is definitely the artwork. So the artwork just starts off really small and then it builds page by page until you get to the end. Like it just keeps building until you get to the end and it's a full-blown picture and it's absolutely gorgeous. And oh my god. And each like edition per page has something to do with what you're reading on that page. It's brilliant. It is so good. The artwork is the coolest part about this book. So my favorite stories are The Witch of Duva and Little Knife, and then my least favorite is The Soldier Prince. I didn't like The Soldier Prince. I didn't really understand what was going on through most of it. It also just felt way too long. So I really enjoyed this a lot. This was a fun read. I gave it 4 stars. Alright, next we have Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I have an unpopular opinion on this and I feel really bad. So I enjoy adult romance. This is adult romance. I've heard nothing but fantastic things about this book and this series. Like, everyone on BookTube gives it 5 stars, even the ones who don't normally read adult romance. And so I don't know if maybe I just went into this with such high expectations, but I didn't really like it. I think it also has to do with the fact that I listened to the audiobook while reading this. And for some reason, the woman who did the audiobook, I didn't like how she voiced the character of Chloe Brown, because Chloe Brown to me just sounded so annoying. She was so annoying to me as a character, but I don't know if it's just because her voice sounded annoying or if it was because she was annoying in the book, and I think it's both. I did like their banter throughout like the story, but then once they actually got into the romance, I for some reason was just not into it anymore. I don't know. I should probably tell you what this book is about. Oh my goodness, okay. So in this we follow Chloe Brown. She is chronically ill. She has just moved into an apartment complex in her own apartment, and she's very much like a list person and with like a plan, and she has to like stick to this plan and this list. And then she meets Red, not her landlord, oh, the handyman. He's the handyman who lives in the apartment complex. And they start off hating each other. I love a hate to love romance too. It starts off with so much hate and then it just turns into passion. It's great. But I didn't get that from this. Like, yes, they didn't like each other in the beginning. They have really great banter, but then it was like they got together and I just wasn't interested anymore. I also thought the fight at the end was so unnecessary. But I guess I did like the representation in this, and I did find it funny at times. So like, I enjoyed my time reading it, but not that much. Like, I felt this was just okay and not a 5-star read like everyone else has been giving it. So I gave this 3 stars. Next I have Millenniagram by Hannah Pash. This is the Enneagram Guide for Discovering Your Truest Baddest Self. If you don't know what Enneagram is, an Enneagram is like a personality test. You can go and take it right now and find out what you are. But I did not like read this entire book. I'm not going to read all the Enneagrams. So I just read my own. So here's the thing. This book does have a quiz in it. Where is it? Here it is. It does have a quiz. I took it, and the number that it gave me, I was very confused. I was like, what? So then I took the online quiz, and again got something completely different, and I believe more the online quiz. So when I took the quiz online, that's the one I would prefer rather than this book. This book's quiz was just not, it's also not as in-depth. But anyway, so my number 1 is a 2. I'm 98% a 2. And then 97% a 9. And then 81% a 4. So I basically just read my top 3 Enneagrams in here. So a 9 is within the intuitive triad, and then the 2 and the 4 are in the feeling triad. So I'm more of a feeling intuitive person, which I totally agree with. Yeah, it just kind of goes through your personality and what you can and can't do to like make it the best you that you can be. But I'm glad I read it, and I can go back, go through certain parts. I didn't rate this just because, again, I didn't read the entire thing, but also I wouldn't even know how to rate this. It's just something to learn about your personality type. And the next one I want to talk about is The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. The Power of Radical Self-Love. So this is, yeah, just a nonfiction about loving yourself, loving your body, loving your personality for who and what they are, and just like taking you step by step how to do that in like a radical way. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but yeah, I mean, it was fine. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I did get a lot of tidbits and stuff from it. It is also short, so it's quick to get through, although I decided to read only by chapter. So once I read a chapter, I finished reading for the day because I just wanted to like focus and soak in what that one chapter was talking about. Yeah, so I enjoyed reading this, and I did get a lot from it, but it also just felt like a lot of things that I'd heard before, and it was just okay. It was fine for me. I know my friend absolutely loves this book and kept raving about it, which is why I decided to pick it up, because I was like, well, that sounds like something I'd want to read. Anyway, I gave this 3 stars. Next I have here Beneath the Moon by Yoshitani. These are fairy tales, myths, and divine stories from around the world. And they're only like one-page summaries of the story. And this was fantastic. You guys, I loved everything about this book. The stories, the artwork in here is stunning. Stunning. And we really do have like mythology and folklore from all over the world. So this is an Arabic folk tale, a Norse mythology story, Greek mythology, a Mara folk tale, Vietnamese legend, Japanese fairy tale, a Salish legend, a German fairy tale. Like, we have so much stuff in here from around the world. This is fantastic. Not a whole lot to say about it except what I've said, which is just what it is. And it's fantastic. It's so good. 5 stars. Please pick it up. I also have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This was also a fantastic book. In this we follow Yadriel. He is trans and he wants to prove that he is a brujo to his family, who still kind of see him as a woman and are still grappling with the fact that he is a man. And so they're scared to put him through the brujo ritual. And there's brujos and brujas. Brujas are dealt with healing, and brujos talk to the dead, can bring the dead to life, and can also help the ghosts, the wandering around, to lead them to the afterlife. Hello, Editing Ellen here. I just want to clarify, because I said brujos can bring the dead back to life. That's not what I meant. I meant that they can, like, bring the dead person's ghost to this world. Does that make sense? Anyway, basically brujos just deal with, like, ghosts. So Yadriel wants to prove that he is a brujo, so he does the ritual himself and ends up accidentally bringing back someone from the dead, Julian, and they go about, like, trying to solve how Julian died because he doesn't quite remember. It's very interesting. It's very fun. I think that's all I want to say about the plot in the story, because it then becomes a lot more. So I loved the mystery aspect of this. It was great trying to, like, solve Julian's death and, like, what happened and how that's leading to some other people's disappearances and deaths. I also really enjoyed the romance that happened in here between Yadriel and Julian. It starts off very slow, but it's wonderful. I also just loved these characters so much. And I loved the storyline, and I loved everything in this. I had such a fun time reading this book. I found myself crying reading this at some point, especially towards the end. Oh my god, so many emotions my heart went through. Anyway, I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastic. Okay, now we're on to 2021 releases. First one I have here is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. So this is a historical fiction romance. We follow, I can never remember people's names. We follow Lily, who is Chinese American. It takes place in San Francisco in the 1950s. So this is at the time during, like, the Red Scare, and a lot of Chinese, and I think just Asian in general, people were being deported because of communism, or suspected communism or something. So we're dealing with that, even though I was surprised that was not a bigger portion of the book. I wanted it to be a bigger portion of the book, but it was, like, barely in the story. Lily is also lesbian, and she has this romance with Kathleen, and she gets thrown into the world of lesbian nightlife and just, like, the clubs, and there's even an entertainer who dresses up as a man. It's just, like, that whole shit going on, and she has to try and keep it a secret. It was a lot. I will say the story does have a lot of, like, heavy topics and hard-hitting stuff about it. I found this book so I enjoyed the romance, I enjoyed the story, but it was just very, very slow. I think for me that was the issue, was the pacing, and I just couldn't get a connection to the story. Not like with Cemetery Boys, I felt so connected to those characters and just, like, was so interested in that story. But this, I found myself bored most of the time. The last 30% was actually interesting and was, like, the part of the story I really liked, but if I have to go through, like, a whole a bunch that's just so boring to me just to get to the fun part. It's not really worth it then. I also really like the side characters more than I liked the main character. And I, of course, loved the important themes and topics that were being discussed. I just, yeah, I had an issue with the writing style and the story and the pacing itself. So I gave this 2 stars. So next I read The Project by Courtney Summers. I'm so mad about this cover. This is the Barnes & Noble edition cover, but I really don't like this cover. I like the other cover better. I think the other cover is so stunning. This one hurts my eyes. This is a young adult thriller involving cults. So we follow Lowe and we follow Bia. We're mainly following Lowe, but we do sometimes get Bia's perspective. But they're sisters. Lowe gets into a really bad car accident. Bia tries to, like, really wants to save her sister and doesn't want her sister to die. Bia ends up talking to this stranger in the hospital and he, like, saves her life, and so Bia then goes and joins this man and his cult. And then a couple years go by and we're following Lowe. She's, like, finding out things about this cult and she's trying to get her sister out of it. That's, like, the main premise of the story. There's so much more to it than just that, but I think that's all I'm gonna say about it. I liked the beginning of it, but then like halfway through, like towards the middle, we got a scene that just made me so mad and just felt very out of character to our character Lowe. That it just like did not make sense to me as to why she was making these decisions. I wanted to stop reading it right then and there, but something just was like intriguing enough to make me want to finish it. And then like after that specific thing happened, the rest of the book I just had like a bad taste in my mouth. It's like still thinking about it, it makes me cringe. I do not like it. It was very dark and suspenseful, and I felt like the cult stuff was very realistic. Not that I've ever been in a cult, so I don't know, but like it felt like it was done realistically and it wasn't like too over the top. But I didn't like where the story went. I also just could not sympathize and like understand the choices that our character was making, and just I couldn't do it. I couldn't get it. But yeah, so this was just like okay. I wouldn't recommend it. But if you like stories about cults, then you probably will like this. I gave this 3 stars. Okay, next I have The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I really enjoyed this. This is a first in a series, and I believe the second book is coming out this year. We're getting 2 books in the same series within 1 year. I think it's coming out in like October or November, and I hope that doesn't change because I really do want the sequel. We have Decca. There's like a blood ceremony that will determine if she becomes a member of her village. I think she's 16 years old or something. And at that age, you go through the ceremony. Some people in this world have gold blood. So she wants to make sure that during the ceremony, her blood is red and not gold. Like if you have gold blood, you're descended from demons. And so then you're immediately like killed. But sometimes it's hard to kill people with gold blood, so they have to try to find the like specific kill that kills that person. Anyway, they find out her blood is gold. Of course. But then they're having trouble killing her, so a mysterious woman comes and gives her a choice. Either stay in that village and continue dying and coming back to life every day, or go with her to fight in the Emperor's army that's filled with girls just like her with gold blood. So obviously we're gonna choose the badass route and go join an army. This army is being trained to defeat these creatures that are this world's biggest threat. And I think that's all I'm gonna say about the story and the plot. I feel like I already said a lot about it, but there is a lot more to it, and I loved, oh my god, I really enjoyed this a lot. I loved all the twists that happened, I loved the characters, I loved the plot, I loved the story. It has really great world building too, which is awesome. I think the only thing I didn't like was the romance, and I don't want to say I didn't like it because I did like it. I don't know, it's like I don't mind it, but I also just didn't care for it. I think it was just like, also I think the romance felt a little forced, but I think I can get behind it maybe in the second book if we built it a little bit more. Other than that, I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend reading this. It's fantastic. I gave it 4 stars, I think. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. Next I have Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is an adult romance about Grace. She went to Vegas and ended up getting married drunkenly to this other woman. Oh, by Yuki. She marries this woman, Yuki. So of course this like kind of ruins all of her life plans, and so now she's trying to like establish a relationship with this woman, but also try to figure out like what she wants to do in life and where she wants to go, because I think she's not feeling fulfilled with like the current job that she has. But anyway, I DNF'd this. Ooh, don't come for me. I know a lot of people are liking this story, but it was just so boring to me. And that was mainly it. Very low intrigue, was very bored by it. So I think I made it like halfway through. Oh, I still have my post-it note. Yeah, I made it halfway through. And I just could not do it. It was just so boring. That's all I'm going to say about it. But I gave it 2 stars. Because I was at least like liking the character and was liking the storyline and like the plot and stuff. But I was just really bored by it, and I think that had to do with the writing. Next we have Winter's Orbit by Evarina Maxwell. This is a sci-fi romance. Okay, so we have Prince Kian and Count Jinan. They are being forced into a marriage. Count Jinan literally a week ago lost his husband and is now being forced to marry Prince Kian. And it's for political reasons. The contract between their 2 planets is up, and so they're gonna have a meeting soon to discuss the contract, or not the contract. It's not a contract, but I can't think of what the word is for it, so we're just gonna go with contract, but like the contract between each other. And so they're gonna have a meeting soon to kind of discuss that contract, see if there's any changes they want to make. So to kind of like help with that contract to be as best as it can be, they're having these 2 marry each other. So there's a lot of like political aspects to this book, which I love a good like political plot line. And it also had a lot of romance. Love a romance. But also with like their forced romance going on, there is a conspiracy going on and a lot of like political aspects. I don't know how to say it without like spoiling things. Yeah, so like neither wants to be wed, but with the conspiracy unfolding around them and the fate of the empire at stake, they will have to navigate the thorns and barbs of court intrigue, war, and the long shadows of Jinan's past. And they'll have to do it together. So it was fine. I found myself actually zoning out a lot of times that I was reading this for some reason. And I definitely liked the ending more than the beginning. I felt like it took such a long time to get into everything in the beginning, and I was like confused for most of it. So I think it was like around here I finally got into it, more than halfway through. I don't want to have to go through all of that boring explanation part to get to the reveals and the good part. Yeah, so it was fine. I actually enjoyed the romance. I really did like the romance, and I liked all the backstories of the characters. But I think it was just, it took a long time to get to what we wanted to get to. So yeah, it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. Okay, next we have Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline. So this is a young adult mystery. We follow Donis, who is Native American. I think this takes place, it was so confusing. I wasn't sure if this took place in Canada or Michigan. I think it was Michigan, but we also had a lot of like Canada times in here. Canada times. But Donis is like just out of high school, and she witnesses her friend dying by the hands of her other friend. And so it's very like jarring, and then she gets thrown into this investigation with the FBI because apparently there's been a drug problem within her community for some time, and they need her help to try and solve it and figure it out. I really enjoyed this. This was definitely going to be a 5-star read until the very end. I'm not saying I didn't like the ending. I liked the ending. It was just, I feel like we were left with a lot of too many unanswered questions at the end. In like a sense where it's like there was one aspect that was not even like explained, and it was a big part of the whole like mystery, and then like we're not even, it's not going to be explained what that was. I want to know what happens with Jamie. I want to know like the story with Stormy and David. Like there were just a lot of things that were not really explained, and I felt like I went through this whole journey. I deserve an explanation. This was so fast-paced. It was so interesting. I found myself not being able to actually put this book down. I read it so quickly. And I loved all of the like Indian Native American aspects to it. I loved learning about that culture. I had a fantastic time reading this book. I do highly recommend reading this book, even with the unsatisfying end. But it's still a really great time. So I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book I have to talk about is Can't Take That Away by Stephen Salvatore. This is a young adult. Wow, so many young adult books. So this is a young adult contemporary where we follow Carrie Parker, who is genderqueer. They are grappling with obviously all the bullying that's going on in the school, but they want to audition for the role of Elphaba for their school musical because they're doing Wicked. But of course that creates a lot of backlash, not just within the school, but also within the community. And it's a tough read, but it's also very like empowering of a read. I enjoyed this. What are my notes? I wrote my notes. I actually like physically wrote my notes down in this one. Something that was tough, not tough, but one thing that was like frustrating with this book is like, I understand that like they are a teen, so they're gonna make bad choices, but it's frustrating sometimes watching like a character make bad decisions, and then when they realize they made the wrong choice, it was like, I told you so. And so it's hard to really then like sympathize with that character. I do also think the romance in this happened very, very quickly. It was like they met and then the next day they were making out and in a relationship. And I'm just, I don't know, it happened very quickly. But I think I understand why the author did that, especially because their relationship, like the journey of their relationship throughout the book was very complex. And so I did enjoy the romance. I just think it started off very like too quickly for me. Another thing that I had an issue with this book was the writing style, especially the dialogue. The dialogue just felt like very formulaic and very predictable. Like it didn't feel like it was a real conversation that would happen. Another issue, this is just like a very small issue that like really doesn't mean anything, but for me it just like bugged me the whole time reading it. They were doing Wicked, which is not realistic because Wicked is technically still on Broadway, even though I know Broadway's like shut down, but like Wicked is technically still on Broadway, and no community theater, no school theater, no one can perform a musical or a show that's currently on Broadway. If it's currently on Broadway, you're not allowed to do it. So that was just so unrealistic to me, and I was just like, you couldn't have chosen any other like diva type role from any other musical. It just didn't make sense to me. Like, do Gypsy. Yeah, so that just like bugged me with how unrealistic that was. And then also another unrealistic thing is one of the characters in here, one of the teenage characters, is like a Broadway star. Like, she's been in so many Broadway shows, and now all of a sudden she's deciding to do the High School Musical. Like, if you've been in that many Broadway shows and you're technically a Broadway star, you wouldn't be sitting there doing the High School Musical. But also, too, if she's such a big Broadway star, all of, like, the media would have been more on her supporting this, like, activism that's happening. Been like, Broadway star, so-and-so, and it's just like, but, like, they never did that. Don't like mistake all those negative things for not liking this book, because I did really enjoy this story a lot. But yeah, it was just those like few things that I kind of had issues with, but overall really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. And that is it for this wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it. I cannot wait to come back to you and talk about more books. But I do also have like my movie and TV show wrap up, so I will link that down below for you so you can check that out. Bye guys!